So welcome back to another episode of Behind the Lens with Roger Rojas. And today's guest is the co-founder of a disruptive stock market modeled online sneaker marketplace known as StockX. Within a short period of time, he has transformed the sneaker resale market, founding an eBay-inspired online marketplace that has ballooned into a $1 billion business. I'm so excited to have on the show Josh Luber. Josh, thank you so much for coming on.
Hey man, thanks for having me.
I want to get right into it. What got you into the sneaker business? Out of every industry that you can get into, how did that come about?
You know, it's funny. I almost, for most of my career, intentionally avoided starting any businesses in sneakers. You can see a whole bunch of sneakers. I've collected sneakers since I was 8 years old. I have the exact same story as every other 42-year-old sneakerhead. I grew up playing basketball and Jordan played. I always wanted Air Jordans. My mom would never buy me Air Jordans. As soon as I got some money, I bought. Like, we all have the exact same story. And so for me as an entrepreneur, I actually almost intentionally avoided creating businesses that were almost like as if they were an excuse to play with sneakers.
Yeah.
And so I think it's not without irony that the business that became the most successful is when I finally blended those two together and created a business that was actually within my own passion.
When you were younger, was this something kind of that entrepreneurship type mentality that you had in you? You know, you always hear stories of other founders of companies who found success and they're like, yeah, I've been doing this since I was 6. I was flipping this, flipping that. I know a big thing that you got into how we met was through cards. So was that something that you started when you were younger, just cards or any smaller type business?
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned cards, and so the like just total like just crazy story or just maybe a typical story. So um, Gary Vaynerchuk, who is a very notable entrepreneur and speaker and really big into cards, when we first met, which was probably 5 or 6 years ago at this point, the very first thing he ever said to me was, he looked at me and he goes, "You're about my age. Cards or candy?" This is the first, like, we never said a word. And I was like, I was like, actually both. Because that, when we were kids, pre-internet, I mean, those were the hobbies, those were the things those were the hustles. You could go out there. And so I actually, in 6th grade, I used to sell chewing gum. I used to hop the fence behind my house and go to the grocery store and buy 4 packs of Bubblicious for $1 and sell it for 25 cents a piece or $1 a pack. And then I was also collecting cards and buying and selling cards. And so those were the two hustles as a 10-year-old in 1988.
In 88, I love that.
Yeah.
Cards. And so that leads into my next question, which I know is a big hobby of yours, and I know it's a big focus of yours, is cards. Funny enough, after that weekend that you and I met, people were asking me questions like no other from things that I had learned from you guys in less than 72 hours.
Yeah, I'm
For
sure.
those who don't know what's going on, can you educate my audience with, most of them are between 18 to 25, of the card market itself and what's actually happening right now?
Yeah, well, it's great that you started with sneakers, because the similarities between what's happening with trading cards right now and what was happening with sneakers in 2013, 2014, when we were starting the business that would become StockX, I mean, it's almost identical. What you have is you have this entire generation of people coming back into the hobby, which is, for in the mid 80s and 90s, when Gary and I were kids, and that was the hustle. It was such a big deal. And for all of us, we grew up, cards kind of got left behind. The industry crashed in the 90s. But now all these people coming back into the hobby, we are the people that create culture. We're the people who make decisions. We're the people that have money that are part of this. And so now you just have millions of people coming back into the hobby, but the number of cards that exist is actually pretty small. So you have this extraordinary scenario that's going on. And I think truly that trading cards are the next sneakers. They're the next big thing at the intersection of culture and commerce. And I think we're only in the maybe 3rd inning here. I think it's just about to really become a big thing. And you look back, I mean, there's so many similarities, even in the fact that Michael Jordan being the center of both industries. It's almost identical. So it's extraordinary for me personally that the two things I was most into as a 10-year-old have become the two biggest things in culture and commerce here. So it's a fun time to be getting into this, and for you to have been part of that. in retrospect, that will be a seminal moment in the history of cards, not because it was me or you, but because you have guys like Steve or Nick Tran, who's the CMO of TikTok and Ski, and because the people that create culture are the ones that say what's cool today, and that's where we're going, and that's why trading cards are coming back.
I love that. What made you push for more when the company of StockX was starting out? Because arguably, I remember, I'm younger than you, of course, and I remember back when I was like 12, 15, the lines to just get a pair of sneakers were crazy. Like the industry, the way things or business was done wasn't on the internet, right? And as I referred to at the beginning, it was really only I knew of eBay as the online marketplace to do so. What made you or kind of push you to see that vision of being like, hey, one, we could be a competitor to eBay, but two, I see this growing even more? Because there's always that point where you say to yourself, right, where I can't see this growing any further. I can't see people investing any more money into this. What was that vision or idea that you had back in 2012, 2013 when you were starting StockX that made you push for more?
Well, it's a good question. It's phrased the right way when you think about businesses and think about building a big business, which is, what's next and how do you scale and how do you get to that point? The reality is there's at no point when we were starting StockX did we ever think that it would be this big. And I can't imagine that anybody who, creates a multi-billion-dollar company thinks that when they're starting, because it's just nuts, really. But there's this, I get asked some version of like, what advice would you give to entrepreneurs a lot? And, it's one of the things I say are always pretty basic, but one of them is just do something. It's like, what is that one step? Because, StockX, it was one foot in front of the other. It was like, all right, well, what's next? Mm-hmm. Right. And obviously you're not going to just stop doing that. So like, what's that next step that you're moving towards? It happened to be that we were creating a business in a place where the industry itself was growing. Today, StockX is bigger than what we thought the whole industry was when we started, when we launched StockX in early 2016. And so, I guess the best way to think about the answer there is just, it was one foot in front of the other to do that one step moving forward. But because of the industry, because of the fact that we went into the market space, because there wasn't really a great marketplace for sneakers at the time where eBay was the best option, it opened up what was a really big lane for us to help grow the industry at a time. A lot of that is whether it's luck or phenomenal timing, a lot of that goes into it as well. And we're just happy to take advantage of that.
When it comes to building a business, I understand a lot of it is partnerships and kind of understanding that one person can never do everything. At the beginning, I've also learned that you try to do that, and then there becomes that threshold where like, all right, I need to delegate or push to something else. When did that happen where you realize, all right, I need to bring in other people around me that further my knowledge and have a better understanding of how I could scale? At what point was that? And who were those characters for you? What did you look for?
Yeah, well, it happens at every second of the business from the second you start. As founder, as CEO, I think your probably most important role is in recruiting and hiring, right? And from the moment you started, and that never stops. For me, I was probably spending about a third of my time for most of my time at StockX in that role. And even right now, I left StockX at this point about 2 months ago. And have started some businesses in the trading card space that, and I'm spending most of my time there now in recruiting as well. But there was obviously a pretty big seminal moment when I replaced myself as CEO at StockX about 1.5 years ago, last July. And we had just done this big round, valued the company over $1 billion. And it was pretty clear that the opportunity for StockX to continue scaling was pretty great. And we wanted to take advantage of that opportunity. And, before StockX, I'd started 4 companies, and the most people that had ever worked for any of those companies was 12, right? Including myself, 12. And at one point, StockX had over 1,200. So, this is not what I do. I have no interest in being a public company CEO. And so when we had the opportunity to bring in and hire somebody who had those skills and could possibly take StockX to the next level, it was kind of a no-brainer to replace myself as CEO and bring in someone to do that. So yeah, that's probably the most notable. But literally from every second that you start the business, you got to be thinking about, who's actually going to, like, you can't do all the jobs. You can't do any of the jobs really once you're the founder and CEO. All you can do is build the team.
When it came to you building and coming up on that, what would you say was your greatest challenge as a leader? Because again, something for myself, nearly nowhere near what you do or kind of the capacity of what you do, but on a smaller scale, I think it's making the decisions, the day-to-day decisions that further you for tomorrow. I'm sure you made a lot of big decisions, and I'm sure there was times where you're like, all right, I wish I would have gone that way versus the other way. What is one that you believe gave you the greatest lesson?
Yeah. Well, the big decisions are, I don't want to say they're easy, but they're fewer and farther between, right? Every day is just a function of many micro decisions that push you in different directions. But I will say, since I think it's a good lesson, we made a relatively big decision early on to add watches and handbags to StockX when we were only about a year into the business. We were far enough along into sneakers that we knew that we had something here. The business was growing, and we decided to add watches and handbags because they were both really big categories. We thought they fit with the StockX model really well, and we wanted to protect the space a little bit and not let someone else and create a stock market for bags and stock market for watches. In retrospect, there was so much opportunity in sneakers, and there still is so much opportunity in sneakers, that time and effort would have been better spent just 100% focusing on sneakers and not diverting that time, energy, resources. Even 1 second, one person is just time you could be spent better elsewhere. And so that's certainly a big decision that I wish we could have had back and we learned from. And by the way, we kept that in mind as we continued to expand the catalog and the categories, and even so much to dovetail with some of the other stuff we're talking about. When we added trading cards to the site at the end of 2019, it was not without a lot more consideration and thought in terms of trading cards within the larger context of the business, that we kind of use those lessons from the first one to make that. And that at the highest level and the most general advice for everybody is it's focus, right? Like it's way better in anything to be, an expert in one thing than to be, okay in 12 things, right? So.
Right, having that what I call blinder mindset sometimes, right? Now, in regards to numbers, because I want people to get an understanding of how massive StockX is, and I remember when we met, there was a couple numbers that you threw out of like what you guys sell on the daily or what is produced. Roughly, what are those numbers so people can get an idea of what StockX was doing on an e-commerce level? Which I think when you hear those numbers, like you see the numbers versus like how right now prior to the podcast starting, you showed me the room of sneakers. You're like, yeah, there's only a couple hundred in here. So can you tell people roughly the numbers that StockX was producing or doing on the daily?
Yeah. Well, they're in the summer of 2018 is when the summer of 2019 is when we did the round that valued the company over $1 billion. And, at that point, we were doing, tens of thousands of sneakers a day that we sell. And the business has continued to grow since then, right? To the point where, the number of shoes that go through our operation center could at times, stretch to over 30,000. The business, wanes and waxes and the different products have different sales numbers, but it's still so early in the global opportunity for StockX. When we think about that, because, I mentioned that we're now bigger than what we thought the whole industry was. Right now, the best estimate for the resale sneaker market is somewhere around 4 to 5, maybe 6 billion globally for the resale sneaker market, right? But the global retail sneaker market is over 100 billion. So that's the ballpark that we play in now, right? Because no longer is StockX just about those shoes that sell for $1,000 and the Jordans and Yeezys and all the hype, right? A lot of the shoes that we sell on StockX now are actually shoes that sell for a retail price, or a shoe that's $110 at Foot Locker that is $105 at StockX. Right. So, now the opportunity for us to be doing tens of thousands and maybe one day soon to be doing hundreds of thousands of shoes a day is not crazy. In fact, it's a natural evolution of what happens when we've converged those two markets, where the retail and resale market cease to be different things. Now there's just one market. There's just sneakers. Because if you're buying a pair of shoes from StockX, you don't care if it's retail, if it's resale. You don't care if it's coming from the Nike factory or a Foot Locker store or a guy down the street. You just want that shoe. You just want that product. And that's really what StockX is about. It's just about access. And that's why we're able to have such a big business and still grow from there.
You referred to now the global market and kind of just sometimes people wanting to get the shoe no matter what. I saw recently a documentary on like having fake shoes or getting fake products. How did you guys tackle that as a company? Because I know that because you have no control over the individual if they're selling it fake or not. But I'm sure, later on, I believe I told, my first ever card purchase was with you. I don't know if you know this.
Yeah.
I was like, and then I got it. It said StockX verification. So it made me think, okay, if they're doing this for cards, they're most likely doing this for shoes.
Yep.
How did you guys go about combating that? Because I know that is a whole different world. And again, I've seen many videos on YouTube and documentaries on people living off of selling fake shoes.
Yep. Well, in trading cards, we have PSA and BGS and SGC. We have the trading card grading companies, which also authenticate the cards. So if I'm selling you I think you bought a Luka Optic rookie, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. And so if I'm selling you a Luka Optic and it's a PSA 9, well, we know that card has been graded by PSA. It's authentic, and the level of confidence that you have in buying that is super high. And by the way, it is now standardized where I don't even actually have to show you a picture. A Luka Donruss Optic 2018 rookie PSA 9, that is what it is. And so you can buy it. It makes it that much more liquid, transferable. It makes it an asset. For sneakers, we had to standardize sneakers and make it so that people could buy or sell shoes off of a single product page to make it as easy to buy a pair of Nikes as it is to buy a share of Nike. And part of doing that was making sure, first of all, that all shoes that we sell are brand new. They're in complete brand new condition. And two, that they're authentic. And so for us starting that, we actually had to invent the industry of sneaker authentication, right? We couldn't go to LinkedIn in 2015 and find sneaker authenticator, right? That job didn't exist. Yeah. So we had to create it. And, ultimately it's elbow grease. It's process. It's, getting a hold of all the fake shoes, all the real shoes, ripping apart, documenting all the differences, creating training manuals, creating training processes, and continuing to scale and create a career really for authenticators. And now we have authentication centers all around the world, and we'll continue to grow and do that. I forget how many countries we're in now. It's maybe 4 or 5 different countries that we have authentication centers, and a whole bunch here in the US, and we'll continue to grow that. So
amazing. While you had StockX, you referred to at the beginning that you had 4 other companies. What pushed you to do that? Like, we referred to having blinders, but I also believe, you said you were selling gum, flipping cards when you were young. So it's evident that you have that entrepreneurship. What more can I do for myself to further value or serve more people? One, what made you want to just kind of extend your arm to do that? Was it an opportunity or was it gut? As you referred to Gary Vee at the beginning too, he refers to a lot of gut and kind of instinct and knowing yourself. What role did that play into you making that decision to branch out to create 4 more companies?
Yeah, it was definitely gut between the two. You obviously learn more about yourself and think about it more strategically and intentionally as you grow. But the first startup that I ever created, not counting the gum business, which was a really good business and great margins, by the way, in 6th grade gum. But is, the first business I ever created, I was single. The second, I was married with no kids. The third, I was married with one kid. And the StockX, married with two kids. And now my fifth and sixth, trading cards, different. But at every one of those steps, you have a much different risk reward profile within your life and how you approach that. And so while the impetus to go down that path and be an entrepreneur and start businesses absolutely starts in gut, how you do that and how you take the risks and manage it becomes and has to be a very intentional thing, because it is more risky than going to work a 9 to 5. There are, there is a much less of a path and a career, a clear way to do that. And so, it takes, transforming that gut into more of a strategy. But I don't know, it just made sense to me that I saw people needed gum, and I knew that I could hop the fence and buy a pack of gum. And I don't know, I tried it, sold one, and I was like, oh, people want more gum. Okay, I'm going to go back to Acme and I'm going to get more gum. So, yeah.
And just kind of kept going. How have you as an individual, again, we refer to team, and I understand components of hiring, but also something, a big topic right now, especially with everything going on in the world, pandemic and elections, is your own process, your own form of comfort and kind of having, not reduce anxiety, but more so control of your own life. How do you do that with everything having going on in your life? Is there something that you consistently do every day, or treatments or kind of things that you do for yourself that you're like, hey, I need to check this off the box every single day to kind of have control or kind of have that system? And again, I know as an entrepreneur, every day is the same, and I know there's always darts and things being thrown at you. Things are altered. You're married with kids, so that's like a whole nother business within itself, keeping that together. But what are some of those things? Because again, many people right now are they ask themselves that question all the time. How does this individual at the highest level manage to do all these things on the daily?
Yeah, I'm sure you get a lot of people that answer with all sorts of super positive, things around either working out or meditation or whatever. Honestly, like, I just don't really sleep, which is a pretty bad answer. I think the pandemic and the situation that we're in now, where everything's remote and Zoom, it's created either a good or a bad opportunity for me where I can go to bed basically at sometimes as late as 5 a.m. And still get 5 hours of sleep and be up and for 10 o'clock calls and going to do that, because I've cut out what I always felt a very wasted time in terms of commute and everything else. It's funny, right before the pandemic, I was actually considering getting rid of my car and just using Uber all the time, which obviously we're not going to do now, nor do I even need to. But like, time management is ultimately the answer to that question in some way, and everyone does things differently. For me, I've always been a night owl. I've always worked really well at night, and so once my wife and kids go to bed, and I'll make sure that I spend the time with them when they are awake. Then is kind of the time for myself, because from 10 p.m. to, well, it used to be 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. Now it's like 10 p.m. to 4 a.m. Man, during that time, no emails, no calls, not like I can just be and work by myself. And to, like, one of the very first questions you asked around doing everything yourself and bringing people on, I still like to do the work. I still like to be, in an Excel spreadsheet or writing a talk or whatever it is. I like to do the work myself. I don't like to be just, managing people and that part of it. And I don't know if I'll ever give that up. I think that's why I like being back at the beginning. I think maybe why I left StockX, to go from a place where I'm, on the leadership team, on the board, managing in the abstract, to now being back where it's me and 3 other guys looking up a hill again, and where we have to do everything. And, yesterday I was literally on a call, setting up like the payroll provider and setting up the bank, and like, somebody's got to do that. And like, so guess what? Like, that's what I was doing, yesterday. And that's part of it. So I don't know. It's a blast. These are all the fun things about being an entrepreneur and starting companies is, and that's the part that I really enjoy.
I think that's so great. Today I'm actually posting a video. It's big fan of actor Matthew McConaughey, and there's this inspirational kind of speech that I always listen to of his. And there's a minute segment, actually, the one I'm posting today, about him talking about the journey. Everyone's like the destination, the destination, the destination. And he's like, the process, right? And again, referring to Gary Vee, we always hear that word, the process, the process. But it's not until, and I'm kind of the same way, when you're going through it, you're like, wow, these little highs are kind of what gets me going and gets you pushing for having more and getting there. And once you're there, you're like, all right, I kind of want to do this again, right? And
Yeah.
it's evident you're going through that right now. It's so funny. You're literally setting up a bank for another call and doing payroll, you know, and you're just doing it because you got to get it done. And I think that's like a great lesson for anyone listening or watching, is that don't get so big-headed with who you are, where you're at in life, right? It's kind of, if you want to get it done, if you don't have anyone to get it done, do it. Don't think you're too big for it. Because it's very easily someone thinking to themselves or listening is like, damn, this guy just founded 5 different companies and he's still making those calls to set up a bank, right?
Yeah, 1000%, man. It is like, I love that you hit it, because it's 100% about the process. It's about, like, if you don't love the process, then like, what are you doing? Because, you know, the destination is a moment in time at best, right? Like you said, all your time is the process. And by the way, if you don't like whatever that process is next, right? And that was me self-selecting out of, I don't want to be on the process of taking StockX, and we'll probably IPO at some point soon and be a public company. And like, I don't want to be a part of that process. I want to be the one where, you know, we're back at the beginning and figuring out, all right, great, we got to set up a bank account, and then I got to hire some people who I can pay through our payroll provider. Like, that's the part. Yeah.
So now I want to get into some personal secret questions. What is your go-to, or should I say, what's your go-to sneaker? Ones that you love and you always rock with. It could be more than one pair, because I'm sure the selection's hot with you. So
yeah, well, what's interesting is, it's a little bit disappointing, is that, you know, I probably only had a chance. I've maybe worn, I don't know, 5 sneakers in the last 10 months, because I don't go anywhere.
Oh, right,
and,
right.
You know, it's right. It's so, like, I have one pair of shoes that I wear when I like go out and play with my kids. But you know, the shoe that I have the most pairs of, and certainly when I was on the road all the time, I would always have with me, is it's a shoe called the Air Jordan 1 Lance Mountain, which is a collaboration between the skateboarder Lance Mountain and Jordan, and it's a white pair that has this really like unique like paint on it, where it chips off over time, then reveals like another color underneath, which never actually gotten that far, but the paint itself makes it has a really like just interesting look to it. Even though it's white, but there's like something different about it, but it's also really good for traveling. And so like you can be walking through the streets of New York and it has this extra layer on it, easy to wipe off, but it's not like patent leather or plastic. So anyway, I have 7 pairs of that. So I suppose having 7 pairs of one shoe makes that one the winner.
I'll tell you something funny about you saying not wearing many shoes. So during COVID, I travel a bunch, and then obviously during COVID that changed. And at the time I was staying down in Miami. I was staying with my best friend at his place. And I was like, I felt so weird waking up and not putting on shoes. I ordered 2 pairs from StockX, and I'll share the story with you. It was literally like, is anyone else just wearing brand new shoes in your house just because you want to have shoes on? And the amount of response I got from people, they're like, dude, I just want to feel like I'm going somewhere, about to do something, even though you're just going to your kitchen, you know? And you're
yeah, here. Exactly. So this is underneath my desk right here. So this is a brand new pair of shoes that actually still has a StockX tag on it, which I do take off once I wear it. Yeah, but it's this is a pair of shoes that I wanted for years, which was this is a collaboration with the artist Stash that did the Reebok questions years and years ago. This shoe is probably from like, I don't know, 2003, something like that. And I bought it on StockX right before the pandemic, and so I still haven't worn it outside. And so I wear this around. Just in the last week, I've been wearing this around my my office. So like I'll wear them literally sitting at my desk, which I've always really like. I love wearing brand new shoes, like around my house with no socks, and just now I'm like
you have the comfort of no creases. Yeah. No one's gonna buff them. No one's gonna step on it.
Yeah, and they're just like, because like there's nothing better than putting on a brand new pair of shoes. But obviously, once you then wear them outside, they're not. So wearing them around the house and there's actually a couple pairs that I've never worn outside, because I like wearing them inside so much, that I've had for years and years and years, and I've worn a ton. but have all become kind of like house shoes and just like never worn outside. But
They've never
yeah,
made
so anyway,
front
so
door.
these Reebok stashes have been the ones that I've been wearing a lot these days.
I'm gonna have actually Joe Foster, the founder of Reebok, on Tuesday on the podcast.
Nice.
Yeah, he just came out with a book called The Shoemaker, talking about the story of Reebok, and
Is he still involved in the company?
I don't believe so. Yeah, I don't.
You
Think
should you should get his opinion on you know that Reebok just hired
Yep,
Kirby
I saw
from
that.
Pierre
Yep.
Moss and stuff like
Yeah,
that. And so yeah, I mean it's one of
making
the
that, making that
yeah
decision is huge in my
yeah
opinion. I thought
yeah
like that's a real like that's funny you showed Reebok because they're a shoe brand that I find very compelling now because of culture may become relevant again with streetwear. That's what
yep
I believe.
yep
Especially with that hire. Yeah.
yep. Having him there is a really important thing.
Yeah, I love that. Now, aside from sneakers, I know you referred to at the beginning of the podcast bringing on like handbags and watches and stuff like that. How did you make the decision to continue to grow the market when knowing kind of, hey, what are we becoming? I'm sure I'm just trying to put myself in that place of that boardroom talk of what's the next thing? You guys making decisions of handbags and watches. Now I go onto the app and there's everything. I could literally find anything on there, from little collectible items to massive pieces to Supreme to everything, from sneakers to above and beyond. How did you guys continuously have that conversation? All right, like next, was it like a simple outline 12-month, we're going to hit this every 3 months, or was it more so you waking up a day and be like, hey, what more can we do? Hey, what more can we add? How was that conversation like within the company?
Well, you know, the important thing for StockX is that, you know, the reason that it has become what it is and have the opportunity to continue growing is it's about the model. It is not, you know, we happen to be the largest marketplace for sneakers and now we sell a lot of other products, but it's about this unique stock, what we call a stock market of things model, where it takes the way the stock market works and applies that to consumer goods. And so the answer is always what products would work well with the model. And those are products that have to be able to be standardized. There has to be enough liquidity in the market. There has to be products that are essentially supply and demand driven. So, you know, anything that you might ask the question, what is this worth? Right? That is something that is a potential product that goes on StockX. You would never ask the question, what is this worth for a box of Cheerios? Right?
Yeah.
A box of Cheerios costs whatever it costs. It costs $3. And that's fine because, you know, Cheerios, essentially there's infinite supply of Cheerios. They will make
Right.
as much as people will buy. And so what you're really looking at is what the world of those products that are scarce, that have finite supply, right? There's only, you know, however many stash Reebok questions they made. And so that's the starting point for us is has to fit in the model. After that, then it becomes a more similar question to how other companies would choose to sell products. You know, does it fit with our current customers? What's competition look like? You know, all that sort of stuff. But the starting point and the absolutely the gating factor is, does it fit with the StockX model?
I love that. What's next for Josh Luber?
Trading cards, man. Trading cards are what's next for all of us. Trading cards are what's next for society, for finance, for art, for collecting, for, you know, for culture. You know, I left StockX because we talked a lot about just the difference in terms of working at, you know, big, you know, huge corporations versus startups, but also that, you know, there were so many opportunities in trading cards that I couldn't not go do this and go pursue it. One, because there's my own personal passion. Two, the similarities between sneakers that we talked about before. But honestly, it just like, I just think it's what's next. I think it's going to be a really big thing. And for both me personally, investing in cards, putting a lot of my own money into cards to buy them, but also creating businesses in cards. And hopefully some of those we'll be able to talk about publicly soon. They're all still in stealth mode. Sorry, no big reveals here today. I think we have a little bit, but 100%, man. Like I think what we saw kind of ties back to where we met and the weekend at Aoki's house and all that. Like, we're just going to see so much more of that, of people who drive culture, who really care about cards because they grew up with cards and it's such an important thing, and they're rediscovering that. either through their kids or as an investment or just their own nostalgia, and getting back in the industry. It's just an extraordinary time to be talking about it.
Love it, man. Thank you so much for your time. Where can people find you? What's the best place to connect with you?
Just Josh Luber at Instagram.
I
Josh
love
Luber
it.
at
I love
Instagram.
it.
So, yep.
Appreciate
Awesome.
you, Josh. Thank you so much
Thanks,
for
man.
coming on.
Thanks for having
Talk
me.
to you soon, man.